Good morning. Hope you're well. I'm Jeffrey. I'm glad to see you. This is Plain Spoken. I get together with whoever wants to join me on Facebook, YouTube, X, Locals, Rumble, 4 or 5 mornings a week. Usually it's just four. Sometimes it's just three. I have 5 small children and a demanding life, but when I can, I love to turn the camera on, just process things out loud that I'm noticing. There's a lot of things going on. It's a very action-packed world, and I'm of the mind that the Christian lens is sufficient for taking in all information. In fact, it's really quite essential that there is no way to really just objectively take everything in without a lens. I think everybody has a lens, and mine is intentionally Christian. And so by that I mean biblical, informed by the Christian text, and then the tradition that I've inherited. And that's how most people are, even if they don't see themselves that way. And so that's kind of how I just take everything in. And so there's information from the world that I'm looking at, and then there's information in my own tribe of the Global Methodist Church, and then basic big ideas that are impacting all of us believers in America. And so if you're not in America, like my brother Stephen, he's in Japan. I'm still, I can't pull up his, but I've got a friend from Germany joining us this evening. Katrin, good to see you, sister. This is still going to be interesting to people. And then you can always redirect the conversation as is obvious. I like checking the comments and responding to people as they are. Before I get into any topics for today, just want to make sure everybody's aware that I have a Substack that I do, and I started on a series, or I announced the start of a new series on the offense of Methodism. I published this on Friday, and a good 50 people have subscribed, and 4 or 5 have decided to fund this work. And if you're with me right now and you're one of my new supporters, I want to thank you for that. But it's sure to be a good series. I'm hopeful about it helping people reclaim a meaningful Methodist faith. I'm going to make the case that it's needed for this cultural moment, just like it was needed in its original cultural moment. So if you are not signed up yet, that's where you can go to sign up for my Substack, jeffreybrickman.substack.com. And you don't have to pay money. So you can if you want to, and I welcome that. But I don't ever paywall that stuff. I want my ideas to be open and available to all, and I would welcome you to be a part of that. Also, I posted something this morning. This is the thumbnail for it. I should not block it with my face. Hospitable Singing Warriors for Christ. This is an interview that I did with 2 clergy in San Diego from a Reformed Calvinist Baptist church, but they're doing an amazing job reclaiming congregational singing for their church. They're also very strong in family ministry, men, children. It seems to me that if Methodists want to reclaim these parts of our heritage, then we need to listen to people who are doing it well currently. So I would invite you to go. I published that this morning at 5. The other thing I was going to turn you on to was I don't know, 10 minutes into this episode of Breaking History on Substack. Not Substack, this is Spotify. And it's talking about Trump's populism isn't a sideshow. It's as American as apple pie. The ones telling the story do not lean right, but the case that they're making is that populism, in the same vein as what Donald Trump is doing right now, is actually super... You've got populism at every point in American history. You've got populists very much like Donald Trump that rise to the surface, not just in America, but throughout world history. Populism is a persistent phenomenon that keeps worldly powers in check. There is religious populism. There's political populism. These worlds, religion and politics, are not really separate. They have an exchange with one another. We have a balance between these two entities in America that's distinctively American. But I think it's important, as we continue to digest developments in the world together, that we don't treat things as more exceptional than they are. And so, as exceptional a personality is, the most exceptional thing I find about Donald Trump is he only gets like 4 hours of sleep a night, and then he drinks a bunch of the soda, Diet Coke, and eats a bunch of fast food, and still he's sharp as a tack and very productive. So that's the most exceptional thing I find. He's a freak in nature, is what he is. But it's important to see people for who they are and not who we're told to freak out. And so he's just a man, and he's going to impact a lot of the news cycle. We're going to talk about some of it this morning. Before we get into any of the news for today, I want to greet those who are with us online. For some reason, my website isn't coming up here. So thanks to everybody who signs in and lets us know who you are and where you're from. We got Ben and Courtney with us on locals, and I will be going to locals for the last 10 or 15 minutes of today's show. I like showing special love and appreciation and attention to people who support me on locals. Had a number of people join me on locals just over the last week. Want to acknowledge Jeff Harrison and Stacy Ness and Dee Freeland, Dex Wood, Kathy the Vegan, and Betty Huey have all chosen to start free accounts over there, and that's another place you can go where I don't paywall anything, but I show special attention to people over there, and that is a place where you can fund my ministry if you want to. So thanks to those of you who choose to do that, and I hope you continue to feel good. Thank you, Sarah Beth, about supporting me there. All right, so the first... Oh my gosh, I was going to go on without praying. We need to pray. All right, let's turn to Holy Aspirations section. It just begins with a prayer called Longings After God. Let's pray. My dear Lord, I can but tell thee that thou knowest I long for nothing but thyself, nothing but holiness, nothing but union with thy will. Thou hast given me these desires, and thou alone canst give me the thing desired. My soul longs for communion with thee, for mortification of indwelling corruption, especially spiritual pride. How robust it is to have a tender sense and clear apprehension of the mystery of godliness, of true holiness. What a blessedness to be like thee, as much as it is possible for a creature to be like its creator. Lord, give me more of thy likeness. Enlarge my soul to contain fullness of holiness. Engage me to live more for thee. Help me to be less pleased with my spiritual experiences. Feel at ease after sweet communings. I know and do. Blessed Lord, let me climb up near to thee, and love and long and plead and wrestle with thee, and pant for deliverance from the body of sin. For my heart is wandering and lifeless, and my soul mourns to think it should ever lose sight of its beloved. Wrap my life in divine love, and keep me ever desiring thee, always humble and resigned to thy will, more fixed on thyself, that I may be more fitted for doing and suffering. Amen. Okay. As I said, I like to, and I don't know if I've even shared this online. In undergrad, I almost double majored in religion and politics. I ended up backing out of the politics major because it required me to do this statistics course that just my brain wouldn't do it. It wouldn't do it. I wanted it to do it. It wouldn't do it. I eventually backed out. The professor said, I'm going to pass you. Just stay in the course. And I just couldn't do it. It felt dishonest. So I took a politics minor. And so I am not a policy wonk. I don't know all the names. I don't know all the positions. I'm more of a layman whenever it comes to stuff. But that's, I think, where most people are, and what I want to model is not an expert opinion on political stuff. What I want to model and participate in is a way to integrate information in light of the fact that I'm a Christian. So most everybody, we're impacted by the political world. Most of us hate the political world, are uncomfortable with the political world. are intimidated by the political world. Politics brings out the ugly side of people a lot. And there are a lot of people who take offense to me even talking about political stuff because they think that religion and politics are separate. And I've just had to be very clear with people. I do not believe that they are separate. And so I think we have a responsibility to approach the political world as believers. And so I want to talk about things that I'm praying about, that I'm thinking about, that I'm wondering about. I think we as people who are engaged in the world, not enslaved to the world, but praying for the world, need to talk about developments in the world. So I'm realizing as I'm setting that up that I still haven't greeted my friends with me online. So I want to acknowledge Jennifer and Doug and Jared. Good to see you, friends. Hat wearer, Jill, that was Marianne Strayhorn, by the way. Jill from South Carolina, Sheldon from Minnesota. Did he say demanding life or wife? It's already been so long since I said anything. My bad, buddy. Carol, hi from Arkansas. Have you heard about the controversy at Quapaw UMC in Little Rock? It was on Resist Sunday. I have no idea what you're talking about. Put a link in the comments and I'll go to it. Hey, Deanna, good to see you, sister. Duncan, Eileen, Lawrence, Brian, Wally, Steven. He's talking about the interview I was plugging a couple minutes ago with those guys in California. I'm glad you enjoyed it, brother. And if y'all don't know, I did an interview with him last week, Stephen Bachmeier. He's a missionary in Japan, Shunan province. Shunan in, oh, I forget the name of the province. So anyway, very interesting conversation there. Y'all should check that out. Hey, Lawrence, Tim, Tyson, Lon, Pat's with us, and Bruce. God bless all of you. It's so good to see all of you. And that's a majority of the 42 people that we have with us online. So thanks for signing in. All right, the things that I'm noting, took interest in. I saw that President Trump already started feuding with a number of people and countries, one of which was the country of Colombia. We've been trying to deport especially criminals, illegal immigrants, people who've committed crimes and felonies since that they've come into the U.S., some from Colombia. We sent 2 planes down there and they refused to take them, so Trump escalated up to here and he said, we're going to put a 25% tariff on all your goods, and there were a number of other things he threatened. But apparently, according to the New York Times this morning, they reversed their of steep tariffs from Trump will allow U.S. military planes to fly deported people into Colombia. He had already turned 2 flights away. And so the Trump administration also, it says here, began immigration raids in Chicago. Immigration is just one of those things. I'm going to read an article here in a little bit, if I don't talk too much, from the United Methodist News Service, just about how this is an issue that is just going to continue to be a thing for them. And it's not that we should never care about the immigrant. And America is going to continue to be a place. It's a place made of immigrants. It's going to continue to be. But there are those who immigrate legally, going through a board of entry and getting the right accreditation. And then there are those who come in illegally. And if your response to that is no person is illegal, then you need some help. This is not how an adult conversation is held. So anyway, prayers for our country as we continue to try and get a hold of, get a handle on how it is that we're going to responsibly administer who comes and goes and who's here. Apparently, I wasn't going to talk about this today, but apparently there was something like 300,000 children that have come across the border that we did not know where they were, and that's been a top priority of the new administration since they came in, identifying who these kids, where they are, what's happening to them. I expect we're going to learn a lot of really sad stories. As I saw yesterday that 25,000 of them had been identified and located, and then I saw a thing early this morning saying we found a lot more of them. So praise be to God. I would love it if we could figure out who all's here, who needs to go, who needs to stay, and then just create a more orderly system. But if I'm sure there are people saying no more immigrants, no more immigrants, but I don't think they're going to win the day. I think we're going to have an immigration policy with a certain number from different regions that are allowed each year, and then we're going to have a more uniform naturalization process, which would be great because I believe there's such a thing as a social fabric where we need to have a common set of presuppositions and loyalties, and that doesn't just magically happen. That has to be inculcated. So that's a long-term thing to pray about for our nation. What's some other stuff I wanted to acknowledge? In the Middle East, there's a peace deal that in the beginning they said, oh, it's not going to hold. And now there's New York Times saying it looks like it's going to hold. Where was that? I don't know. I didn't have it pulled up in the right place. But there's reason to be hopeful, apparently. So let's be hopeful about peace in the Middle East, and Gazans being able to go home, and Israel being able to be protected. I mean, things are not nearly over. I saw that the 4 young ladies that were returned looked to be in good health and happy. I saw a thing with them on stage waving to Palestinians. I'm very confused about what's happened there. I have no idea what's happened there. It seems very odd to me. I'm also keeping an eye on, they're declassifying all the files around JFK, RFK, and MLK assassinations. Remember, they all happened roughly at the same time. There's been serious suspicion that the CIA was behind at least JFK, if not the other 2. And millions of pages have been released that are going to take time to go through. I'm very interested to learn what's happened. A lot of what's happening right now is we're negotiating our history. So far, the history and the post-war consensus has been that everything has been basically above level, and our government has been the good guys. And if it turns out that our government has actually been behind or complicit in the assassination of a U.S. president that was standing in the way of the military-industrial complex, that's going to revise a lot of 20th century and 21st century American history. And you can be, I guess I could be accused of being a conspiracy theorist, and I don't want that stuff to be true, but you have to make sense of the world that you're in. And you can only gaslight people so far. A lot of people know something's been off for a long time, and it'd be great to get down to the bottom of what's been going on. Like, one of the things that's confusing me is, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this, but it's just amazing to see how much the Trump administration has been able to accomplish in the first week. Stuff around the border that Biden swore could not be done. And it's just, it makes you wonder, like, who's been in charge? I saw the thing with the Speaker of the House saying he had this encounter with the president where it was very clear that the president did not know what he was signing, that they were just putting things in front of him that he didn't know what they were. Figuring out who's been in charge for the last few years, I think we need to know these things. And I see a lot of people kind of essentially saying there's nothing to see here. Feels like there's something to see here. And what's at stake for me is we have this huge behemoth power that we're giving all of our tax money to. I would like for it to not be evil. I would like to not be funding evil things. So I was elated whenever Trump signed some stuff last week saying that no more federal money can be used to fund abortions domestically or abroad. That's just a common sense thing. If we're going to be a moral nation, we cannot be spending our tax dollars in this way. It's hard not to get excited and hopeful about this stuff. The only other thing I thought I might point out, I wasn't going to read this whole article, but Target is ending its diversity goals. Target, the retailer, as a strong DEI opponent occupies the White House. So this is the Associated Press. Obviously, it's going to slant left. But I just think this is a really interesting development. What it says is discount store chain Target said Friday it would join rival Walmart, a number of other prominent American brands, in scaling back DEI initiatives that have come under attack from conservative activists. And as of this week, the White House, the Minneapolis-based retailer, said the changes to its belonging at the bullseye strategy would include ending a program it established to help Black employees build meaningful careers, improve the experience of Black shoppers, and to promote Black-owned businesses following the police killing of George Floyd in 2020. You can read that article more if you want to. I've got the link in the show notes. But yeah, the way it set it up is it's a bunch of right-wing activists that are against this. I think it's anybody who has common sense. We have a good 65, 70 years of federal policy aimed at trying to skew how things are turning out with outcomes demographically with racial minorities, and it's not gone the way that they've promised it would. In demographic terms, 65 years, 70 years, it's a good period. You can learn a lot from that time. And one of the things that we should have learned by now is that top-down interventionist efforts don't work. So if there are people, and I'm sure there are people that really want Black people, Native Americans, Hispanics to stay poorer than white people and Asians, and they stay in their place. I'm sure those people exist. I don't think there are many of them. I think everybody wants all people who work hard to do well. That's the American dream, right? And that's not guaranteed. It's not a 100% thing. It happens all the time. But generally speaking, if you work hard, doesn't matter where you come from, you can get to where you need to go. IQ, Charles Murray has kind of established that IQ really matters a lot in that. Here's the thing. Top-down government policy poisons the well, and we've known this for a while. I think people who do it intentionally. I think they know it doesn't work, but it participates in this scheme that divides right from left, because people on the left are of the mind that the only way that you can accomplish anything approximating equal outcomes is to take from those who are benefiting and give to those who are not benefiting. But that instills a kind of infantilization of people who benefit from it, and a resentment of people who don't and who are actually harmed by it. It's not good for a cohering, unified country. Do we want to be unified as a country? Then that means that we have to end measures like this. It's been Ramaswamy wrote about in Woke Inc. how strange it is that these huge multinational conglomerate bodies have been at the forefront of kind of this social re-engineering project where we're trying to, from the top down, make everything equitable. First off, that's not the job of private business. It's also not the job of government, by the way. But the fact that you got all these huge multi-billion-dollar companies on board with it is amazing. And now it's amazing that they are abandoning ship and they're turning around. So this article blamed it on the Trump administration rising to power. I'm of the mind that it's just common sense. They saw that the incentives aren't there. They weren't. I mean, it probably does have to do with who's in power at the top, where they can get their money and tax breaks from and stuff. But it also has to do with who is ascendant. Right now, everybody knows the same thing happened at the end of the 1960s. Everybody knew that far left policy didn't work and was making things worse. We've woken up for a moment. Question is how long we can hold on to that now. And whenever I use this left-right dichotomy, for those of you who haven't heard me give this shtick before, I'll give it in just 30 seconds. The left-right dualism focuses on legitimate differences, ideological differences. It's a predisposition towards inherited traditions. So on the left, religiously or politically, the left is much more willing to consider that people in the past were idiots who didn't know what they were doing. People on the right generally are predisposed to trust that people in the past were just like us, and generally what we've received is inherited wisdom that we should not abandon. So I have more room for people on the political left than I do on the religious left. I've said that in the religious sense, people on the left are, there is no such thing as liberal Christianity. That's an alternative faith. Within America, I think there is a room for the liberal tradition as long as it's more centrist than far left. Anyway, I think we need to keep watching this stuff, but to be patient and optimistic as we see our society change back to more common sense values and approaches, especially in business. It would be great if business just got back to a pure meritocracy. Well, not that it was ever there. There have always been social factors that kind of influence things. But if we could all just aspire towards a meritocracy together, I think that'll be to everybody's benefit. And if we could stop infantilizing racial minorities. I mean, I'm not a racist. I don't think there's any difference between black people, white people, Native Americans. I think we all have the same capacity. So I think that we will all rise to together as we're held to equal standards. That's my prayer and my hope. Let's look at something pertaining to the GMC. I saw an article about the Wesley at West Texas. For those of you who are not Methodist, in the United Methodist Church, at different college campuses, there's often what's called a Wesley House or a Wesley Foundation, which is an explicitly Methodist. It's affiliated with the United Methodist Church. It's usually just like a hangout place where there's like a chaplain that will facilitate some worship and then some mission projects, and then it's mostly just like a safe space for people who don't want to abandon their faith altogether. Some Wesley foundations do much better than others. This is one of the things that Global Methodists have had to say goodbye to as they've left the United Methodist Church, is an official presence on campuses. They've just had to leave these things behind, and there's been a lot of sadness behind that, because a lot of people in Methodism, their faith was nurtured in undergrad. And so this is kind of a big deal that the GMC now has a Wesley at Texas A&M University in Canyon, Texas. It became the first Wesley campus ministry to officially align with the GMC. The decision to align with the new denomination marked a bold step in faithfully answering God's call, holding firm to the authority of Scripture, and embracing the values of humble leadership. It's called W.T. Wesley, West Texas Wesley. A Christian community for college students decided to join the GM Church because it shares its dedication to making disciples of Jesus Christ and is committed to empowering the next generation of worship passionately, love extravagantly, and witness boldly. That's been the tagline from the beginning. W.T. Wesley leaders reported that the organization's transition to the Global Methodist Church was driven by a deep commitment to remain grounded in biblical truth amidst a rapidly changing world. With support from both within and beyond the GMC, the Wesley has seen an outpouring of prayer, encouragement, and resources united behind its decision. The unity reinforces its commitment to raise up the next generation of Christian leaders ready to serve wherever God calls them. Sabby Mannix, W.T. Wesley's Associate Director of Development, was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, a longtime member of W.T. Wesley. Sabby spent 5 years as a student and has served on staff for the past 4 years. When she began college, she was running from the Lord and was drawn into worldly culture. The W.T. Wesley stepped into the gap, helping guide her back to her faith. Now Mannix works with college students standing in the same gap for those being pulled in countless directions, many away from God. So my undergrad, I went to Hendrix College, and I feel like we definitely had a chaplain. We didn't have like a big Wesley Foundation presence there. But whenever I lived in Little Rock, U of A was there, and I went to the Wesley House there frequently. Not frequently, like 5 times. And it was just like this hangout place where people could go, and I didn't participate in hardly anything they had there. I never got the appeal. I never saw the appeal, but I wasn't at one of these schools that had one. And so it's one of those things like Walk to Emmaus, where like I haven't seen a lot of what it has to offer, but man, some places they turn out people who are on fire about it. It's obvious some places are doing a lot more than others. There here in Oklahoma, I think we had like 7 Wesley houses that we were supporting in our annual conference, and I was just appalled, frankly, at what I saw at a lot of them. But it seems pretty clear that at some of these places, they really know what they're doing. What's to be said about these Wesley houses other than my curmudgeonly stuff? I've always been, let me just say my little bit. I'm concerned about alternative faith communities that are not the local church, basically. So there's a homeless place in Bartlesville, 20 miles west of here. They do amazing work, but they have like their own little chapel where they baptize people and then just set them loose back out on the street. And I'm just going, man, that's not good. They need to be inculcated into a consistent community that is bigger than their community. And that's the thing that I've always worried about any college chapels and chaplaincies, is they're a subgroup temporary community, and when you're bringing them to Christ in that, how many people, I'd be interested in longitudinal studies of how many people consistently stay in those and then stay in the church once they leave those places. That's my concern with college ministries. Does that mean that we should abandon colleges entirely to worldliness? Absolutely not. But I just wonder, I wish there were a way to do college ministry more better, where it was directly tied to a local church. And I see the comments are coming in now. I hope I haven't offended anybody too bad. This article is not very long. Our vision to disciple students in their calling and empower them to serve within their communities, said Mannix. We hope no matter where our students go, whether into vocational ministry or the workforce, they will continue to plug into the local church and serve the body of believers. This mission is taking root in tangible ways for WT Wesley students engaging in ministries across campus. From Bible studies to prayer groups, worship nights to campus outreach, students are living out their faith with confidence and boldness. For many, their college years are a time of deep reflection as they discern God's call on their lives. Students who once struggled to find their place in the church are now boldly proclaiming the gospel and leading others to faith. Quote, our dream is that one day every floor in every residence hall across the university will have a Bible study. That's a great. If what we're doing helps, all worth it, said Sydney Smith, a junior at WT and student leader from Lubbock, Texas. It's not about the numbers or being seen by everyone. It's about reaching that one person and making an impact for his kingdom. That was written by Morgan Howe. I don't know who that is. But anyway, I just saw that and I knew that there are a lot of people who care about campus ministry and reaching young people. And whenever we're talking about giving young people a serious faith and making sure that there is a next generation in the church, then I think we need to pay attention to what kind of ministry is being done intentionally with young people. Let me check some comments before I go on. Yep. Good morning, D. Carol says there was a report on the Laura Ingraham show that showed a Catholic priest. He was very loud and damning about the Republican Party and Donald Trump. Well, it looks like I'll have something to review tomorrow. This was at Pulaski Heights, I guess. I think you were the one talking about that. Tim, if the files show ongoing entrenched, the JFK files show ongoing entrenched corruption, we should consider selling ourselves to Greenland. Oh, that's funny. If you don't know, Trump has been wanting to get control of Greenland and has been semi-serious about it, and apparently negotiations haven't gone well so far. Any news on the 2 Rio, Texas conference lawsuits that were pending? Decisions were supposed to be in January. I have not heard anything. I had guys close to that were going to talk to me on camera, and then the Rio, Texas conference appealed, and then they backed out. So we'll see. We'll see what comes out. It sounds like there's going to be developments any day then. Stephen says best years of his life were in the Wesley Foundation. Jared says Deuteronomy 25:13-17 through 17, which condemns having 2 weights for your scales, essentially condemns DEI as an abomination to the Lord. Ooh, I haven't heard that interpretation before. I like that very much. Well, whether or not I like it, that doesn't matter. But yeah, there's a condemnation, I remember, against those who use different weights and scales, and that's in the literal sense against in the marketplace whenever you're buying and selling stuff. If you have a certain price per unit, but then you're weighing that unit differently for different people, the reason you would do that is to cheat them out of money. But the Proverbs also speak about the importance of having one set of measures for everything. If we're to have a coherent way of going through life, an honorable way of going through life, we have to have one standard. And of course, ultimately for all of us, that one standard is Christ himself. D says, do all denominations have chaplains or houses on college campuses? No. Usually it's just the big rich ones. Gerald says, I was involved with the Wesley at Texas Tech in the early 80s in the old Northwest Texas Conference. All 3 of those Wesleys went independent, as around 80% of the conference left the UMC. Yeah, they weren't a huge conference, but a huge portion of them left the UMC. It's sad that they all went independent. Stephen says the big thing with the Wesley is that they're active outside the Wesley, heavily involved on campus and actively welcoming people. Regarding the fear of being outside the local churches in Amarillo and Canyon actively involve themselves and support the Wesley and see if it's going to be done. That's how it needs to be done. Doug says, I my personal backsliding was my own doing, but it was aided by being reliant on being in a Christian group, but not a practicing member of a local church. Yeah, that's what I would warn against. There are a lot of things that we do that are like secondary or tertiary to the Christian faith, but nothing can replace the local church and regular fellowship with the full covenant body of believers. Jared says Wesley at West Texas AMU has produced a surprising number of young people interested in becoming leaders in the church. So it's more than just a continual jump start. They're quite good at plugging in. Oh, Quapaw. Okay, thank you, Carol. Yeah, I need to check that out. I'm gonna write it down right now. Check out Quapaw. Roman Catholic anti-Trump priest at Quapaw UMC. All right, let's go on to this Christian Post article. I originally saw this and I was like, I don't want to talk about it, but it's the largest United Methodist church in the whole denomination, supposedly. Has a huge staff, and one of their longtime clergy just quietly retired right after he was charged with, I don't know, solicitation of prostitution. Yeah, here it is. Texas megachurch pastor retires after arrest for solicitation of prostitution at a massage parlor. I don't necessarily need to talk about everything, but I saw like 4 articles about it, and I thought, this would just be dishonest not to acknowledge. And I feel like I've seen this guy's face before, John F. Fiedler. 1,000-member Highland Park United Methodist Church in Dallas, Texas. He retired last month following an arrest for solicitation of prostitution at a massage parlor, whose new owner was known by authorities for promoting prostitution, according to police and court records. Fiedler, 72 years old, has been a pastor at Highland Park from 2013 until his retirement in 2024. Church records show Fiedler joined the megachurch in 2013, where he preached at the 11 a.m. sanctuary service until he was chosen to direct the Mark Craig Leadership Network to train servant leaders. The Mark Craig Leadership Network empowers servant leaders working in the church and in the public sector to integrate faith into their work. Through the network's 2-track program, our goal is to expand spiritual influence by sending servant leaders into the community. So there's more to that article, and including a picture of the place where it took place. But I don't know. You can read about these things on your own. I read 3 of the articles, and I'm getting flashbacks to that East Indian Christian apologist Ravi Zacharias. Similarly, these freaking massage. I'm never ever gonna go to a massage parlor. 1, because I like being high strung. Don't loosen me up. 2, I'm just afraid to death that it's actually going to be a sex trafficking place. It happens all the time at these prostitution places. Don't do it. I don't know how many of you have read American Saint, which is a biography on Francis. It's because, when you're in luxury and relaxing, life feels pretty good, and you're not really thinking about your sin and depravity and all this. And in fact, when you look at places like this, you're giving into your depravity. And I'm thinking of in Boston Avenue United Methodist Church in Tulsa. They had a long-standing pastor who turned into a bishop, actually, who he was gay, and his office was high up in the tower of this church, and he would have gay prostitutes brought up to his office at the church and have sexual relations with them in the place. Why am I bringing this up? Just because you preach Christ doesn't mean you follow Christ. Just recently with Steve Lawson, people have been appalled. This guy was preaching what sounded like the pure word, and then he's practicing adultery. What do we do with this? Well, if you're a worldlian, you look at this and go, the faith of Jesus Christ just doesn't mean anything to any of these people. And I don't think that that's the way to go. I think the way to go is something that Methodism in particular has as a strength, and that's to preach and expect holiness and accountability. So one of the phrases associated with early Methodism was watching over one another in love. We have to watch over one another in love. We have to hold our leaders accountable. And then as we do that, we have to respect and honor and obey them as well. That's the exchange. But here in America, where our culture affects how we do church, we very much want to be left alone. We want to have our privacy. We want for people to watch themselves rather than us. And that makes it so that these people who, I'm not going to say they don't believe. I mean, obviously they believe in some capacity, but they don't fear the Lord rightly. They allow the evil one to get in and start whispering and saying, oh, you can do this, and it's not a big deal. Like, we all know how the evil one works to foster temptation in us. So if you don't have that spiritual equipment to say, get behind me, Satan, and he's going to get you, and he's going to scandalize your ministry and the ministry of Jesus Christ. I mean, how many people learn about stuff like this and go, man, this guy, he really made a big difference in my life. And if he could do this, then the faith that he preaches just must not be worth very much. If you saw my interview with Jared Smith, the atheist church auditor, you saw that this came up in his mentality a lot, that I've just known so many of these people who are serious about their faith, and whenever they give in to temptation like this, of course it's going to put a bad taste in people's mouths. So just like we're seeing in the realm of politics, there are certain things that just don't work, and we need to sober up and stop trying to do this thing that just doesn't work. We were talking about DEI initiatives. We need to stop doing stuff like that in the church. There are certain things that set spiritual leaders up for failure. And we're going, gee, why are all these failures failing? Why are all these pastors failing? Well, maybe it's because we don't fear our sin enough. Maybe it's because our theology of depravity, have you noticed a theme with me? We don't have a healthy, robust doctrine of sin. We've imagined that we're all basically okay. If you sit in a pew, sing some hymns, then the evil one doesn't have any power over you. If you speak in tongues, say some words of knowledge, you're going to be okay. No, the evil one is powerful. Our own sin, we don't even need the help of the evil one a lot of the time. We are sinners. We're steeped in sin. We're inclined towards sin, and that continually. And we need to be continually filled with the Holy Spirit. We need to be held accountable and subjected to the scrutiny of faith. That's why you need to be in an accountable small group discipleship group. You need people holding you accountable and watching over you in love. Otherwise, the evil one, your own sin, will do you in. That's the moral that we need to learn. And it's like communism. People think, yeah, a lot of people have failed. I'm going to do it right. They failed, but I'm stronger than them. And I think the only sober, faithful place to get is, I'm no better than anybody else who has fallen. So I need to organize my life in such a way that I cannot fall. So me personally, like, my wife has my passwords to everything. She can easily get on my phone, my computer, see how I've been talking to, what I've been doing. I've had men's accountability groups where I'm laid bare before them, and we expect the same thing. This is very countercultural, but if we're not willing to do this, then we are going to continually have people, I don't know how many of you, when you saw I was going to talk about this, I do think liberal churches have a more accommodating theology to sin. But the scandal of nowadays is even people who have right-leaning evangelical theology, right doctrine, can still completely fail in this arena. It's demoralizing and depressing to see just how many there are. It's also, this thing got blown open because more law enforcement attention, it seems to me, is going towards sex trafficking and ending this stuff that's been going on really forever. But I mean, it's almost, I love that they're cracking down more on this stuff. And they saw this woman who was facilitating all kinds of sex trade here. And then they saw who was going in there and discovered that he was one of them. So they're now trying to claim that he has like dementia, and that this moral failing was, he's just not the same person. He's really struggling and he's not himself. Maybe, I don't know him, but I just know accountability sure is hard. So, uh, and I hate talking about this because the man has a family, and I'm sure he has people who love him, and I would hate to add to that. But listen, friends, if you're going to be a religious leader and you are not willing to pursue holiness, you need to get out right now, because not only is it going to scandalize the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's going to hurt your family when you're exposed. And if you're just sitting here, oh, I can manage it, and I can still do what needs to get done, and I can just keep my secret sin, that's going to do so much harm. You need to get out of ministry. It doesn't matter that we need more pastors for churches. If you cannot rise to the moment, you've got to get out. And then if you are struggling and you hear the truth in what I'm saying right now, repent and bring that to your elders, and you need to be forgiven, and you need to walk in newness of life right now, because the church does need people who walk in righteousness. We cannot have people who scandalize the faith like this. We need people who step up and stop making excuses and stop justifying themselves. So if that's you, do it. But if you are justifying yourself, especially with sexual sin, you need to get out of ministry right now. That's just unacceptable. All right, it's 8:18. I'm going to look at a couple comments, and then we're going to switch over to locals. So Steven says, agreed, Jared, the Wesley at WTAMU has for at least a decade long been producing leaders. Marianne says, I graduated from the University of DE back in 1980. The UMC group had merged with an ecumenical group and was crazy theologically liberal. So as soon as I got on campus, I joined InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. Since I was a commuting student, I was able to keep up involvement with my church home too. Yeah, that all fits. Oh, we'll see if anybody else was struggling with my sound. Or I wonder, let me see real quick. I'll just do a quick experiment. Does my sound go out? Nope. Okay. All right. D says clergy stumbling is a big problem. Do clergy have access to class and band groups yet? So in an official way, there are conferences that have facilitated something like that, but not many. And even ones that do, what I'm going to be focusing on with Pete Bellini in this February series is we're going to be laying a groundwork. A lot more people do it wrong than right. You know, accountability is hard. Biblical discipleship is hard. And so we're going to be helping purify those groups that are in place, because a lot are not doing the work the way that it needs to get done. Oh, others. Okay, did it get fixed? That's weird. I have no idea what that was. Okay, for those of you who can't go over to locals, let me just say a brief blessing for you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. I'll be back at this again tomorrow morning. But if you want to pray with me a little bit more and go and cover just a little bit more content with me and my locals friends, then you can go over to plainspoken.locals.com. And I saw that somebody else just signed up to support my work on Substack on the Plainspoken account that I have. And so if that's one of you, God bless you. Thank you for that. All right, we'll be back at it again tomorrow morning. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll see you over at Locals.